Hello, superhumans. Hello, Rebecca Gibson. How are you?
Hello. Good.
Hello.
I'm good. How are you?
I am fabulous. It is our last speaker for day 2. Can you believe it's almost a wrap of day 2? Michelle and I have started getting a little bit silly near the end of the day, so just had a
Well, you
cuppa
know
made.
me. I'm always silly.
Excellent. So we're grounding with our cups of tea. Hopefully that will get us through.
I need it.
Rebecca Gibson, it's always an honour and a delight and a pleasure to have you come and play, because I know you not only as a friend but professionally, and I've also seen you grow and evolve in sharing your gifts and being of service in this world where it's needed most. So Rebecca here in front of you is a psychic medium and intuitive. She's also a nurse, and she's an all-round great gal. Yeah, she's awesome to go and have a cuppa with, and she's a mum and a fabulous person. And today she is going to talk about the evolutionary empath. Now, that's a term that I would wage that 10 years ago no one really talked about. It might have been known about, but not necessarily in the... No, just the empath. The evolutionary, I think, is a new part that you've added. And also, I think, more and more on social media and things, people talk about, I'm an empath, they're a narcissist, blah, 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 blah. Can you navigate us through that? What is an evolutionary empath, and why is this important for us as part of managing our energy?
So the reason why I termed it the evolutionary empath is very much for empaths to look at the utter raw truth of what it's like to be an empath and the energy behind it, the emotional frequency behind it, and why there are so many of us now awakening to the fact that we have this clear empathy, like clairvoyance, clairaudience. It's a psychic ability. And it's really important to not be disempowered by the literature that's come out thus far. Mm-hmm. And now with social media, everybody weighing in on what an empath is, what a narcissist is, and all of this misinformation that's being given out. It's important to, let's get really real about what it means to be an empath, the shadow that entails, and how to alchemize the things that we do that we don't like in others, that we call narcissists, and evolve into a more empowered being, a more energetically accountable being who uses emotional frequency to recalibrate everything around us back to love, rather than feeling disempowered and going into our inner victim archetype.
So that was all a lot of big words. And I know that our audience here uses their big words, and this is all about energy. And we've talked a lot about meditation and mindfulness, about consciousness, about raising our vibration, about frequencies. We've done sound healings. We've had Reiki experts. But some of that, I think we need a little navigation, some support. So I think a little bit around, what's this shadow part? Yeah, what does that mean?
Well, what about,
how do we use this?
The basics is we're egoic consciousness, we're subconsciousness of body, and then we're a higher consciousness of soul. And so that dictates whether or not you're feeling sympathy, empathy, or you're an empath. So sympathy is very much attached to egoic consciousness. And sympathy would be, so say you with your car accident. Oh, that's terrible. Too bad for you. Glad it wasn't me. That's sympathy, completely separating. I don't want to have any kind of energetic, emotional attachment. Too bad for you. Boo-hoo, so sad. Then the empathy is, do you know what I mean? The empathy is, oh my goodness, that would have been so horrible. If I'd had a car accident, I'd be feeling, holy crap, I have to get my car fixed. I don't have a car. I'm so glad I didn't get hurt. Glad it wasn't me. That's the empathy.
Right.
The empath takes it to a whole nother level of, holy good night, you had this car accident. I can feel that your life flashed before your eyes. You've re-examined your life. You're starting to think, why wasn't I listening to my intuition? Why did I do this? Why haven't I been paying attention? What's going on with my life? And then delving deep into, how did I create this accident? The empath feels the depths of it, actually experiencing the frequency that you're experiencing. There is no separation. Empaths feel the frequency as if it's their own. And most of us go through life without hearing the term empath, because it's really basically such a new thing in the last couple of decades, and thinking, how can we be feeling someone else's emotional frequency? This must be my frequency. I must be feeling this way. And so we've led a whole life of being so sensitive in terms of emotional energy and emotional frequency, being told we're too sensitive, crying at things, laughing at things, getting very emotional about stuff that truly has nothing to do with us, but we're experiencing it like it's our own. And so that in itself creates problems, because we're carrying around baggages of other people's emotional frequency, believing them to be our own, because we live in this world where we're separate from everyone. And so being told that, oh, you're actually feeling the frequency, the vibration of what that person's feeling, is foreign, because we're taught to separate ourselves from one another when we're really not separate at all.
Yeah, and so it brings up for me the fact that we are all one, and we're all of the same stardust. We're all one universe. What happens to you happens to me.
Exactly.
And when I hear you talk about maybe the thoughts that went on in an empath and what they experienced, you know, from my accident, I go, oh my God, that's exhausting. Even I didn't think all of that stuff. So is it exhausting energetically for an empath?
It is exhausting if you're not putting good spiritual health practices in place.
Right.
So we're mind, body, and soul. I mean, you know that I've been nursing in psychiatry for 26 years now, and I'm big on mental health. I'm big on emotional health when it's not my, like the empath emotional health, and physical health. And we're taught all the time, straight from Healthy Harold, when we were younger, this is what you should be doing for your physical health. Now mental health is really starting to come into the forefront. This is good practices for mental health, but nobody's talking about spiritual health. Nobody's talking about spiritual hygiene, looking after your energetic body, caring for your soul, doing things for your energy and your energetic body to make sure that you are grounded and you are accountable and responsible for your energy, your frequency, what you choose to give out and what you choose to take on board.
Amazing. And yet I think it has been talked about, but in ancient times and with cultures, and that it got lost in this Western world and way of living where we
lost, or was it deliberately shoved
or
on
was
out?
Buried? I went to some sacred sites the other night with some Indigenous people and some locals, and they talked about, they did a smoking first. They asked us all to take off our shoes. We had to ground ourselves on the earth, and it was this process of cleansing and preparing before you went to a sacred site, so that you didn't carry all of that with you. And essentially what they were doing was spiritual hygiene, and they do it all the time as part of their everyday life. So
like we would shower, brush our teeth.
Right.
That's why I say it's hygiene. You would shower, wash your body, brush your teeth every day. You should be doing exactly the same with your energetic body, because we tether to each other constantly through our electromagnetic fields, and we're constantly connecting in with one another. And the empath is here to tether into people around them and recalibrate their frequencies back to love, to create this energy, this vibrational match, to alchemize people who are in fear back to love. And we then, when we understand that about ourselves, we need to be super responsible, making sure that we're clean and we're not giving out fear-based frequencies, but we're also disconnecting ourselves at the end of the day, grounding, recharging, and having very strong personal, emotional, physical, and spiritual boundaries.
Absolutely. And I think all great leaders of spiritual practices will often say, the higher your consciousness, the more you're into this sort of thing, the more responsibility you have for some of those sorts of things, because you can't become unaware. But for those who go, maybe spiritual hygiene is a little new for me, and boundaries is a challenge. What are some simple steps or things? Have you got some clues or tips for people that go, I know I need to do that, but I'm not doing it regularly. I'm not sure where to begin.
I think the easiest way that I have spoken to patients and clients about this is to understand that you do have an energetic body, that science has proven that we have this massive electromagnetic field that emanates from our heart because it's a super complex organ. It has very complex cardioneurology, nerves, like, energy coming out of it. What's plugging us into source energy. And so we have these big electromagnetic fields with, I should think they say that the average is 3 meters in circumference. People who are using their field on purpose will obviously expand much bigger than that. And it's that energetic body that's tethering to each other. So you know that you have it because someone could walk into a room behind you. Before your 5 senses have kicked in, you haven't seen them, heard them, actually tactile, touched them, smelt them, taste them. You feel their presence, you know that they're there because your electromagnetic fields like boom, bumped into each other, and you can feel your body will, goosebumps, hair up on your neck. You'll know that somebody's there. And so you're connecting cords all the time with people around you, people that you talk to, people that you bump into. When you go out, empaths really struggle in crowds because you're feeling everybody around you. A lot of us are very introverted, don't like speaking on the phone because you're still connecting to people. So you feel drained, and you go to bed dreaming about people, unable to stop your egoic brain and all the white noise. And so clearing off your energetic body is to make sure that you do a cord cutting intention. There are many different YouTube guided meditations to walk you through cord cutting. I have a YouTube channel called Golden Goddess TV that has a cord cutting guided meditation on there. And a really important thing that people don't talk about is cord cutting's been around for a long time, and energetically cutting cords off that are communicating from other people. But what we need to also be doing is retracting our own cords. We can cut other people's connections into us, but we also need to pull our own cords back in and make sure that we're not still tethered to other people around us, sending frequency to one another, because it's exhausting. And empaths feel very drained and feel very much, poor me, I'm so drained all the time and still attracting all these people, even though I've been setting some form of physical boundaries. I'm still feeling drained by them. So you have to pull your cord back in. For me, I pretend, it's old school now. I've still got a vacuum that's not a Dyson stick. I've asked for it for Mother's Day. I don't think I'm getting it. But I still have one that you press the button and the electric cord gets
retract the cord. Yes.
So I pretend I got one on my head, and so I do a cord cutting, and then I'll press the button and I'll set the intention to pull my cords back in. After you've
I
done
do
that,
the same thing, except mine is out of my tail. Now I'm like, oh, maybe it should be out of my head.
I could go places. I could say things, but it's not just us, so I'm not going to. Control Alt Delete. Alexander Joy. So the important thing then is to ground yourself, and grounding is very much about pulling all of your energy that's flying out and pulling it back into self, and making sure that you've got all of your energy pulled back in. I do this morning and night. I do this between clients. I do this between patients. I do this on my way to the hospital, on my way home from the hospital. I'm constantly cleaning off my energy. But the main way to start is morning and night. Cut cords, retract cords, ground your energy. You can walk bare feet outside. Empaths really thrive much better if they clean their energy off in sea salt water. So if you're lucky enough to live near the beach, get into the ocean as much as possible. Otherwise, get a really good sea salt, put it in bath. If you don't have a bath, put it in a bucket, put your feet in a bucket, and make sure that you're breathing deeply and you're getting a lot of oxygen into your physical form, and you have like really good oxygenated blood, because a lot of empaths shallow breathe because they feel so overwhelmed by the energy around them. They forget to breathe properly, and we kind of just breathe like he is. lots of us carry weight because energetically we're wanting to protect ourselves, not realizing that we're filled with all of this frequency that's not ours. A lot of empaths have a lot of health struggles, a lot of autoimmune problems. We have a lot of relationship issues with people who have narcissistic traits. We have a lot of relationship problems with people who actually have met the criteria for narcissistic personality disorder. And so it's obvious that there are reasons why empaths would feel like a victim, but it's really important not to buy into you're too sensitive and that's why you're having all these problems. Once you're more accountable and responsible for what you're doing with your energy and understanding why you're having these relationships with people, then it's easier for you to become more empowered and evolve.
So I'm also thinking, and I'd love to hear more about what the evolutionary empath is, but I'm also going, these people who are quite super hypersensitive and able to read and feel other people's emotions and things going on around them, in some ways that could also be a gift when managed well, could it not?
It's a superpower.
Yeah,
how do superpower?
Yeah,
we're here to recalibrate people back to love, but you can't recalibrate people back to love if you haven't returned back to love yourself. If you're still not feeling validated, not feeling love, still feeling like you are a victim of the world around you rather than creating the world around you, then you're going to really struggle, because energetically you're still going to be tethering into other people to recalibrate them. But instead of you recalibrating them, you're taking away their pains and sufferings and then absorbing it as if it's your own and then carrying it with you. This is a really important thing about the evolution of the empath, is just the understanding. There are many books around about this now, lots and lots of stuff on the internet. People saying that there's psychic vampires running around and that they're deliberately hooking into empaths and draining them of all their love and all of their feel-good things, but that's not the case. That's one of the most disempowering pieces of information that empaths can take a hold of, because it really strengthens your inner victim. Poor me, energy vampires are running around draining my energy, but that's not the case. We're the ones that are tethering into them. We're the ones recalibrating their frequency. If we're not pulling back our cords, if we're not pulling back our energy, if we're not setting boundaries, we're going to continue feeling drained by these people, because we're taking their stuff off them and absorbing it. Once you realize what you're doing, you can recalibrate their frequency and then leave them at it and not absorb any of it. But they're not giving it to us, we're taking it.
So we're taking responsibility and kind of wearing the weight of the world by taking on their stuff.
Yes, but what we've been told is that they're dumping it on us. That's not the case at all. We're taking it. I really noticed this when I was working in correctional centers. I'd be sitting there because I was a sole practitioner. I'd be sitting there in my office, and then an inmate would come in, and then they would divulge all these things to me. And I would, the questions that I was asking in the engagement would be, divulge this to me, I'm going to take this from you. Divulge that to me, I'm going to take this from you. They'd leave my office halfway skipping down the corridor back to their cells feeling so good. Feeling so good.
And you'd be like, ugh.
And I'd be like, I just got hit by a truck. And it took me a long time and a lot of health issues. It took me a long time for me to realize, oh, I've been taking this from them
and allowing
carrying it as if it's my own, knowing that they were feeling better. And so my victim archetype, she really graduated into martyr. She got a master's in martyrdom, and she thought she was amazing. She thought she was amazing until she nearly died.
She was Joan of Arc, right? Rescuing. And
yeah, so even with the voices.
What about if people go, I think I could be an empath, but I'm not sure, and I relate to some of that. How do you actually know? Because it could be just I'm a sensitive person, or
That's right.
Yeah.
Main signs of if you're an empath are all centered around childhood stuff, because it's like you were born like this. Your skills are like bang right there, right from the get-go as a baby. You would have been told you're too sensitive, you're too emotional, you daydream too much, you're too off in the clouds, you would cry a lot, you'd be really impacted, like a physical response to yucky feelings, movies, television, really struggle with the news, that kind of thing, because everything would make you
Right.
feel sad. You really struggle with dead animals or animals being hurt. That kind of like just sends you over the rails. And most of us, it really does. Well, for me, you know what I've been like, having worked with serial killers and stuff for a while. I'm like, oh yeah, I can, like, I'm good. Well, I'm not good. No, that's not a good way to put it. I am not affected by people killing people as much as I am by animals being hurt. If an animal's hurt,
Absolutely. I'm with you
really,
100%.
it
I
really
used to be able
impacts
to watch
me.
surgery. I could watch someone get cut up and their heart stopped and started again. But if there was any dead animals, I'd be like, don't show me the bones. Like, I
Oh,
cannot
well,
handle that.
I've cut many
And,
bodies up. Not as a serial killer, though. The government paid me to cut bodies
oh,
up. So please, if you're watching this, don't think that I did it for free, for the love of it. I made sure that I got paid. That probably sounds weird.
interestingly, what about embarrassment too? Because I know like shame is a low frequency vibration. And I know I couldn't handle it on, I think it was Sesame Street, where they used to have people get a pie in their face. And I would run and hide. I couldn't handle seeing someone else's shame.
I do get, embarrassed. I've probably watched many things where you get embarrassed for the person and you're like covering up. But
Yes.
once you feel like it's your own embarrassment and that you're embarrassed and you're not feeling embarrassed for them, that's when you know that you're absorbing their stuff.
Right.
I've
Right.
found probably about 95% of my clients who are empaths have had a narcissistic parent. And by narcissistic, I mean, pretty much meet the criteria out of the DSM-5. But narcissism also is very misunderstood, demonized.
Can you explain DSM-5 for people who don't know what that
So
is?
the DSM-5 is the diagnostic manual in psychiatry. It's the latest one. There's also the ICD-10. I don't use that one, so it may have progressed from now. But there are certain criteria that you need to meet in order for you to be considered to have proper narcissistic personality disorder. But social media has its own little like criteria for narcissism now. It's thrown around.
Yes.
Someone
Often people with an ego are said to be narcissists,
yeah,
right?
like, I don't get along with that person. They're difficult. Therefore, I'm the victim of their difficult personality, and they're a narcissist, and they're a monster. And there's all these like rooms on Clubhouse, and people like having entire businesses based on narcissistic abuse in relationships. For me,
Oh, wow.
who I've spent a career working with people who literally meet the criteria for narcissism beyond into psychopathy. It's not as prevalent as what people think it is. It's just that people feel more comfortable going into, I'm a victim of this person, rather than where is my responsibility in this difficult relationship. And for me, that's the evolution of the empath, to know that you're mirroring back people's gaslighting, you're mirroring back people's narcissism, you're mirroring back people's lack of accountability with your own gaslighting, narcissism, and lack of accountability. You're never going to progress and empower yourself and become the super powerhouse of emotional frequency that you are if you're not willing to have a look at where you've been an a-hole in all of this as well.
So that is like the summary of your whole talk. That last little sentence, absolute gold.
That's the evolution of the empath. Empaths, and I say this as one, we are master gaslighters. We are master manipulators, but because we feel sensitive, and who the narcissistic person that we're dealing with doesn't look like they're feeling sensitive, we feel like we're the victims and we're the hard done by ones. We actually create most of the drama that we have in our lives. It's not the other people. There are no psychic vampires draining us. This is absolutely about our own accountability and our ability to realize, I'm the one with the emotional intelligence. I have the higher emotional IQ. I need to stop being a brat. I need to stop gaslighting. I need to stop manipulating. Our gaslighting and our manipulation. So this is what happens. So someone who's narcissistic feels disconnected from self-love. Therefore, they're not feeling self-worth, self-validation, self-love in a healthy aspect. So they need to get it from outside of themselves in order to feel it. So someone who we consider to be narcissistic, I'm so wonderful, I'm so amazing, I'm not crazy, my behavior is really good, you're the one with the problem, you're the one that's crazy, look at me, aren't I amazing, aren't I great, tell me how amazing I am. And so that's how they get their self-validation and their connection to self. When the empath is in shadow and mirrors back that behavior of being disconnected and not being in self-validation, self-worth, self-love, their form of gaslighting is, I'm fine, everything's okay, I don't have any feelings, I'm not sensitive, I don't need this conflict, so I'm going to tell you that I'm perfectly okay. Then I'm going to go away and I'm going to stew on it for the next 6 weeks. I'm going to show you lots of passive aggressive behaviors in the hope that when I slam this door, you'll read my mind and know that I'm pissed off about something you said to me 6 weeks ago. At the time, I told you it was fine. And then eventually you blow up.
Wow.
The other person's like, where did this come from?
What the hell just happened?
What you're talking about. Why didn't you say this 6 weeks ago? You told me everything was fine. So that avoidance, that lack of boundaries, that allowing people to like do and say whatever to you and having no reaction to it other than I'm fine. The like the avoidance, the conflict, the people pleasing, the rescuing, it's all to have some kind of validation that you're not able to give yourself, so you're seeking it from outside of you. It's master manipulation of the energy. And so truth has never had the ability to come out in those situations because it hasn't been dealt with right then and there. That's the evolution of the empath, for them to realize, oh my goodness, I am a gaslighter. I'm
doing what I'm accusing others of doing.
Yeah. And so between an empath and somebody who's a traditional narcissist, they're both in narcissism. They're both disconnected from self. They're mirroring back to each other. It's just that this empath's more sensitive than this narcissist. Well, actually, the narcissists are very sensitive. They just don't like to admit it, so they shut it down completely. The empath has no option, but when it gets that overwhelming, it all comes out. So you've got one that completely retreats unless they're triggered into anger, and then rage will come out. And then you've got this one, if they're triggered into anger, they'll retreat for a while and then it'll come out later. But it's same energy. Neither of them are accountable for their own emotions. Neither of them are accountable, and neither of them are setting boundaries, and neither of them are speaking up from a place of being assertive, which is from a place of self-love. This is how I'm feeling. They'll be like, I feel this way because you did this. I feel this way because you did that. You made me feel this. No, you made me feel that. Instead of like, I feel this way because this interaction has happened. This is my accountability in it, but I don't like this behavior coming from you. This is my boundary around it now. These are the consequences if you should walk over that boundary again. And let's work together to have effective communication and keep returning each other back to loving ourselves before we have to seek that love and that support and that codependent, unhealthy connection
loop
between each
that
other.
Gets caught up. And it sounds a lot like that old adage of, adult parent child, that the empath and the narcissist are going between parent child, whereas that kind of courageous conversation that you were talking about in the middle is being adult, is being able to say, this situation occurred, it made me feel this way, it's important to me that we resolve it, here's what I think I can do, and my part, what can you do? Like it sounds like really it's finding that middle road.
It's really important to sit with yourself. What is this pattern that keeps coming up in my relationship with others? If there's something that keeps coming up where you're having these interactions, are you really just attracting a lot of narcissists, or are you narcissistic yourself in a mirror form, and these relationships keep happening because you're the common denominator and you're not having a look at What am I doing that's making my communication less effective? Where am I avoiding? Where am I manipulating? Where am I gaslighting myself, let alone other people? And so you have
It's
a look
like, no, get out of
yeah,
town. It can't be me. Surely
most
not.
of us do have a narcissistic parent. And I think energetically, the reason why we choose parents that are disconnected from self like that is because right from the get-go, our empathic abilities are being exercised. You are energetically tuning in. What mood is that parent in today? And how is my safety going to be affected? Because self-protection mechanism is
Preservation.
so, yeah, in a child, it's like these are the people that are supposed to protect you, and yet you feel empathically they're not. They're disconnected. They're lying to me. They're not telling me the truth about things. And in order for me to protect myself, I need to behave in a certain way depending on what mood they're in. So for me to be, I really noticed it. So my brothers were 10 years younger than me. I was very young at home with two little ones by myself while mum was out at work and coming home from work. So I would tune in. This is the time she's leaving. What mood is she going to be in when she gets home, and how should I be acting when she walks through the door? Should I be cleaning? Should I be in my room hiding? Should I be cooking? What's going to diffuse her the most based on the mood that she's currently in? And it would be different every day, but that would exercise my ability to tune into the emotional frequency of her. How should I respond? How should I act? Which, even though it's a self-preservation thing, it's also gaslighting, because I'm manipulating my side of it to avoid conflict.
In anticipation. So we've just had a question from one of our Facebook viewers, Marlon, who's asking, so how does an empath realize this and avoid mirroring? Where do they start? Which is a great question. I mean, even the fact that you're willing to ask it is a good start. But where do we begin if we think maybe I'm doing it?
If you're not going to use somebody like me to coach you, then it's having to see where do I keep having these relationships. So for me, I'll use myself an example so you can see for yourself where it is with you. Narcissistic mum, okay, where am I having these problems? Friendships falling apart once boundaries and stuff getting set. Really like a traumatic relationships, like relationships where things sometimes would get violent, and I have to sit rather than feeling like a victim, because the minute you go into victim, you're just going to recreate that exact same relationship with somebody else because you haven't healed within you what's going on. So I had to sit and have a look at where my behaviors were the same throughout all of those difficult relationships. What is it that I'm doing that keeps creating this pattern? Because I'm a sovereign being, I'm a creator of my reality. So therefore, these relationships, my accountability in it is I've been avoidant. I've not spoken up. I've been a people pleaser. I've let everyone think that everything's fine when it's not. And then I have a look at, and so then I have a look at where my health struggles correlate with difficult relationships. And I mean, I am the kind of person that needs to learn lessons really. I need to be slapped by the universe. I mean, you know what my life is like. So I'm on my third marriage. It's taken to me husband number 3 where I'm like, wow, you're just as narcissistic as the other two. Without me going, all right, I'm just headed for another divorce. He and I are parents together, and that was the biggest drive for me to, I need to make this work because our daughter deserves us to be the best parents. And I really love him. And so I had to have a look at his behaviors, have a look at my behaviors. I'm like, wow, I'm being avoidant. I'm saying everything's fine. I'm being passive aggressive. I'm expecting him to read my mind. That's not going to happen. So what do I adjust and what do I change? Because if I change my emotional frequency and I raise my frequency and I start putting these practices in place, then he's got nowhere to go than either run away or raise his own frequencies. And so then the conversation started. This is my, and I would always, this is my behavior, and I see you mirroring it back to me with this behavior. let's sit with that. How's that resonate? And let's talk about it. And they're really adult, hard conversations. But
Yeah.
our relationship is amazing now. And he's like a completely different person.
Right.
My relationship with my mother has shifted because I've done all this work on myself. She doesn't trigger me anymore because I've worked on it, and therefore I'm not avoiding the conflict. I'll be like, Mum, that behavior is not okay. Don't speak to me like this. I'm a grown-ass woman, Mum. Like, this behavior's got to stop. And if it doesn't, these are the consequences. I just won't be in your life as much. And so she stops like poking the way that she used to because there's nothing to poke anymore. There's nothing there in me that's triggered because I've healed it. I've done the shadow alchemy. I've done this work on myself.
When we stop, they stop, right? And I think it's all about this, you know, the scale of consciousness and frequency that I love and bang on about, which is that whole above and below the line. And if you're saying that empaths are coming here to help recalibrate people to love, well, love is 500 or above, and the border is 200. So any of the frequencies below are contractive. Fear, anger, hurt, denial, grief, all of those are very contractive. And that's where we make it all about me, all about me.
And you'll find most empaths have inflammatory, like physical inflammatory responses because they're harboring those low base dense frequencies that their cells don't want to have. So there are trillions of cells that make up our subconscious of wanting to be so obedient. Well, if you're going to make me carry this baggage, like, I'm going to puff out. I'm going to be inflamed. Things aren't going to work as well because you are loading me with way too much stuff that's not even yours.
Yeah. And so to get above 200 or to move from victim to victor, you know, at level 200 is courage. It requires courage. Marlon's saying, remove the tension and the hold releases. It's that whole thing of, I imagine almost like a beach ball, you know, and you try and hold a beach ball under the water, that's a lot of tension. And so you have to kind of let that shit go.
A lot of tension or a lot of gas.
Yeah. We've got like only 5 minutes left. And I know I could talk to you for hours, but what haven't we covered, or where to from there? Like, if we want to let go of the tension and we want to become an evolutionary empath, and we know our job here is to help raise other people up, but to do that in a safe way, how do we make that shift?
You got to start detoxing. Detox from crappy frequency. Don't watch the news. I used to be one of these people, especially when I was working in the jail. You need to be, you know, ahead of current affairs. You need to know what's going on in the world. And I find now, no, you don't. You don't. Little bits here and there for public safety, so to speak, especially around COVID and stuff. But no, you don't really need to have the news on in the morning, have the news on in the evening, shift your frequency. The things that you watch, listen, read, consume, if it feels really crappy, don't read it.
Take it on.
Don't take it on board. It's not your stuff to take on board. Start having a look at your own toxic behaviors. What am I doing that I know is not making me feel good, but I'm continuing to do it? Who am I hanging around that I know is not making me feel good, and yet guilt, shame, loyalty makes me want to attach myself to these people? Wow, I've been friends with them for 20 years. I have to keep being friends with them. You don't have to be. Hello, darling. She's just sneaking in.
Can we be friends with them?
You don't have to be friends with toxic people if you don't want to. And if you've got toxic family members and you've tried the whole, like, let's have a conversation and it's not working, do you have to have them in your life? No, you don't.
Yeah.
And this is very confronting for people, but if you're willing to sit down and try and have these assertive conversations, let's set boundaries, let's have a look at new parameters and how we're going to communicate with each other, and they're just not up for it, do you have to have them in your life? No, you don't. You need to look after you and your energy. You've got to detox from toxicity, including your own behaviors, whatever it is that you're consuming into your energy, physically, emotionally, emotionally, spiritually, and that includes the relationships around you. And then after you've done that, start really conservatively working on raising your own frequency, doing things that bring you joy, doing things that, like for me, it's singing, dancing, music, like listening to stuff that fills your soul and enriches your soul and makes you think and create and understand that you're a sovereign being and that you're creating in this universe, and that when you leave here, whatever you've created beyond your own kids, whatever you're birthing out into the world is a legacy, and you want to make sure that it's in those higher love-based frequencies, and you don't want to add to the fear of the collective.
Amazing. And I think, as you can see, Mish has joined me.
Hello.
Hello, welcome. I think one of the big themes that's been so far across these 2 days has been a lot around personal accountability. And that whole concept, I remember when it first hit me, that it's not my job to heal or fix others or to carry them and enable their healing. But the more I heal myself, that my level rises, and then others will come with that. You know, that's when it rises really for one, it rises for all.
A really important point. If someone calls themselves a healer and you want to have a healing, I'm going to go to a healer. Ask them, are you, like, what does being a healer mean to you? If they say, oh, I heal, that's their ego talking. Like, I will say, for lack of a better word to others, I'm a healer, but I'm not healing that person. All I'm doing is creating space and triggers for that person to be able to heal themselves. We're never healing other people. We're just creating space for the person to heal themselves. And that's really important, that if you're going to go to a person, make sure their ego is not telling you that they're going to heal you, that they're just giving you the know-how to be able to do that within yourself. We're the creators of our own life.
I think back what you were talking about earlier about really leaning in and looking at your shadow and really saying, where am I the one who's doing the gaslighting or being a narcissist or whatever the label is that you want to do, but you're really saying that. I think that's the sign of someone who has the capacity to evolve, is someone who's willing to be, that's right, willing to be open and actually look at that. And I think the other side of that is, without that capability and without that capacity, we remain low vibe and stuck.
That's right. Stuck in our victim archetype, because we all have archetypes. We all share the same four: victim, inner child, prostitute, and saboteur. And they're all our shadow archetypes. And victim is very strong in empaths. And that's why when people write their books, create their courses, market to empaths, they're marketing at the pain point that you're a victim. And I'm going to make you feel justified in being a victim, and so you're going to buy these things from me because all of a sudden it's safe for me to be a victim. Oh my goodness, someone sees me, and then all of a sudden you don't have to have accountability or responsibility for your own actions.
That's probably 90% of sales.
Probably why I'm not selling so many spots into my evolutionary empath, because I'm like, you ain't no victim. You are gaslighting and you've become a master at it. And if you want to move into warrior, then you need to realize that you're just more manipulative than they are. I feel sorry for people who are in narcissism. I look at my own behavior and I'm like, all the narcissists that I've dealt with from a place of me feeling like a victim and me not being accountable for my own energy, I look at the ways in which I've annihilated them, thinking, oh my God, I'm so tough. What a warrior. Oh my God. See, my master's in martyrdom.
What's your PhD going to be in?
A swear word.
Oh dear. Mutual laughter.
No. Because I realized it now. It was like, wow, I'm super at gaslighting. Like gaslight, like the most psychopathic of narcissists, thinking that, oh, I'm so feeling, I'm so sensitive. Oh.
I think some of it comes back to that quantum idea of past, present, future as well. That often when we're stuck in being an empath or narcissism or whatever, it's often dragging up stuff from the past and those sorts of things. And the personal accountability comes in the now. You can't do it in the future, in the past.
No, that's right.
You have to be present. And nearly every speaker we've had has talked about being in that now.
Yeah. You've got to be willing to have a look at that shadow aspect of self and understand that you're an ego. You can't transcend ego. If anyone says they're transcending ego, run a mile, because that's sure sign of diagnostic narcissism. You cannot transcend ego.
A big part of it is to realize that when you're open to talking about that and addressing those things, that's courageous. That's the sign of a true human. That's becoming more human. That's what it's all about.
To go, I have failings, I have ego, I want to be liked.
Of course we do, because we're human. Ego is only attached to human. When our physical form leaves this 3D game that we're playing, there is no ego. Ego goes back and alchemizes where it needs to, just as our human form alchemizes and returns back to the earth. And then our soul goes back to wherever it is that we go before we move on to our next experience. And people are so, ego's so bad. It's like, it's not bad. It's a necessary form of survival. And shadow is what is looking at us like you have the ability to put light into this, which is truth. If you look at your shadow with pure love, pure truth, that's what alchemizes it into, this is the true essence of who I am and my accountability and what it is that I need to put out into the world. And I need to put out into the world, learn from me. I was an epic, narcissistic, disconnected cow face, and I've learned from my experiences. And now let me help you.
You needed to be slapped before.
Let me help you realize that.
Last night we had someone else that said she had the face of an ass that's just been slapped. We've had a lot of slapping going on in this energy series. Clearly. Oh dear. It's day 2 and we're up to slapping. Goodness knows what day 3 is going to bring. But speaking of which, we are coming up close to time. And so we want to say thank you, Rebecca, for sharing your wisdom, your experience, your authenticity, your vulnerability, and your great humour with us all.
And we didn't crash.
I know. We had a few wobbles, but we stayed. And Michelle and I kind of want to just do a little wrap-up of the whole so far where we've come. Yeah, so we want to say... Thank you. We'll have to mail you one.
I've got a black fur.
You've got a furry one. It's very glamorous. So a round of applause. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts
to you. Having me.
And we will talk to you soon. See you back.
Love you. Bye.
Bye. So,
day 2. Wow, what a day it's been.
I know.
I wonder if anyone noticed the technical glitch that we had today. Do you think they did?
I don't know, but my internet was not good enough out in the forest. And,
so AJ had quite a journey today. She had to get her motorbike fixed, then she jumped on her motorbike, then she came to my place, all because the internet in town is always reliable. And what do you think happened?
The internet went down right while we were on with Babette.
Right in the middle of a speaker. So if you were watching Babette and you suddenly saw AJ disappear and then reappeared, that will be why.
That's why we had internet. And I'm like, I came to the city for good Wi-Fi. And there you go.
But notwithstanding that, I think there are some really clear themes that are coming out of this. And one of them that's really striking me is this whole thing about we heal ourselves. I think every single speaker in their own way has either explicitly or implicitly talked about self-healing.
Yes. And personal responsibility. And that
as a mechanism towards
it's our journey, but also that the one affects the all.
Yes.
But not to do something in order to affect the all, but to do it because you know that when you heal yourself, then you can support and be there for others.
Yeah, and I love one of the things that came out today was about the idea that as humans we're all designers.
Yes.
So we're designing. She was talking about space, but really we're designing our own reality with every single thought form that we have. Every thought that we allow to float past us, even if it doesn't become articulated in words, is designing our reality. And I think that's so powerful to capture.
And I think Marlon was just reminding me to talk about the superhuman experience, because that's exactly what we do there. And I think it's important to us because we've worked through that, haven't we? We've really gone, if I'm 100% accountable for everything in my life, like everything, then what does that look like? And the superhuman experience that we've got starting on the 3rd of May is all about taking that personal accountability and really being raw and real with it.
It really is. It's about, and it's also such a safe space to be able to have these conversations, because often when you're going through your spiritual journey, it can be lonely and you might not have good spiritual peeps like we have, but you might not have that support system around you. So this is a perfect environment for you to be able to really connect with people that are going to be thinking similarly to you, asking similar kinds of questions, wanting to deep dive in similar kinds of material.
And not be embarrassed to go, hey, I've just noticed this stuff, this pattern or whatever it is keeps showing up in my life. Does anyone else experience that, or has anyone got any feedback onto that?
And I think one of the good things about the superhuman experience is we really start to explain a lot of the terms that are used, because spirituality has a lot of jargon to it. You know, I was just conscious earlier on, someone was talking about epigenetics as though the whole world knows what epigenetics is. And I'm sitting there going, you know what? Most people are not going to have any clue what epigenetic means. So the one thing I like about the superhuman experience is it really allows you to explain a lot of those ways of understanding and ways of knowing.
To experience things, because we give a lot of tasks, and in the online content as well, there's a lot of self-reflective practices, and we ask people to really go inward and think about, how does this sit with me? How does it resonate with me? And can I practice some of this? So we really do take people on the journey of spirituality, but not in a way that is, you have to burn incense and wear cheesecloth and be woo-woo.
Which can if you want.
And there's a place for that.
Optional.
And great, you know, I've got my hair and pants. I love them. But that's not what we're talking about. And I think whenever anyone tells you I'm very spiritual and I'm more evolved and, you know, I'm wearing my essential oils and whatever else, like, good for them. But if they need to tell you, then that's
how spiritual they are.
Then that's a clue. Sign. And so your spirituality is your journey. You do it your way. We like to hold this container in the superhuman experience to allow you to kind of wriggle around in it and just do some check-in. But really, it's a safe space for you to be you and to make that journey your way. So there's no one way.
And I think one of the most powerful things when we ran it last time was the weekly calls that we had, and everyone would love just jumping on, and there was some true transformation that happened just within those calls on the last
and people who I think really didn't expect to get what they got out of it, and almost on the calls were surprising themselves by, like, I observed this kept happening this week and these synchronicities happened, and they were so astounded because it wasn't something that had ever been in their vocabulary or their world before that. So even if you're like, I don't think I'm spiritual enough to even join, or, you know, maybe that's not for me, then yes, it is. It is for you. It's for everyone.
And, you know, I know what it's like watching these kind of things, what we're just talking about. And if you're sitting there and you're going, oh, that sounds a little bit interesting. Oh, how do I find out a bit more? Then we've made it super easy for you, because the posting is all through the summit, all through the summit group. So there's pretty much no way that you can't find out, as well as anyone who registered with the summit with your email, you're going to be getting emails that have information about the superhuman experience as well.
So
day two, it's a wrap.
That's a wrap. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you for your comments throughout, and even if you're doing replay hashtags later, it's great because we go back and the team goes back and we're all reading it, and it's part of being part of the vibe and the community, just being part of this even. So thank you for joining us for day two.
And what have we got to look forward to tomorrow with day
we
three?
have so much to look forward to tomorrow with day three. We kick off with Stanley Beckett, and I think you're interviewing him.
And you know what? He interviewed me on his South African radio station, so I'm conscious that we have quite a number of South African listeners as a result of that. So that's going to be a good one.
Great. Then you're speaking with
Jill, yes, and that's going to be excellent too. And she's just been accepted into a PhD that I want to ask her a little bit about. So that should be interesting. And then Seth Lyon is the other person, and he's talking about somatic trauma. And just in reading his overview of what he's going to speak about, it already changed my understanding of trauma.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah,
Awesome.
I'm
I
really
love
looking forward
that.
to him.
We love this when we grow as much as everyone else, and we're always like surprised and delighted by everything, even though we help pick the speakers. And then in the afternoon, I'll be interviewing and working with Siddhi Shakti, who is this most amazing woman who works with you on the resonance on sounds in your body and mantra and all sorts of things to bring about transformation. Then we've got Christina Gerakides, who is a dear friend and a close colleague of ours, and she's going to talk about moonshot mindsets. Wonder what that's about. And then lastly, our very last speaker before we wrap up is the beautiful Shoshona Goodman. And Shoshona is someone who is very dear to us and that we would consider one of our spiritual siblings in our circle of friends. She is actually an Indian healer from Canada, so from northern Canada, and she comes from the Medicine Bear clan and does a lot of beautiful healing and energy and really understands planet Earth, Mother Earth, Father Sky, and as a woman who has grown with her tribe, really understands how we connect into that powerful energy to heal ourselves.
And I think she's the perfect last speaker because she really will talk about where to from here in terms of your own evolution. And that's really what we're looking at. Thank you so much, everyone, for being part of it and commenting and jumping on and, you know, saying all different things in the group.
Thanks for being you.
Yeah, we couldn't do this without you or without the speakers being so incredibly generous. So I want to say a massive thanks.
And again, big shout out to the Being More Human team
and
who
to
are
the BizTech Global team as well. They're the ones that created the intro video and the outro video, and they've got someone behind the scenes making sure that all the tech is seamless. So they've done a fantastic job.
So speaking of that, thanks, Steve. That's a wrap for day 2. Take us out with the outro.
Thanks, Steve.